Just to give you an overview for tonight, I'm just gonna give about 10-minute reflections about non-attachment, key teaching of the Buddha, inspired by Linda's question yesterday, last time. I decided to put together a little talk, write out something, and then we're gonna have 10 minutes of mindful movement, and we'll go into a meditation that's related to the reflections that I'm giving this evening. And then we'll take our 5-minute break and then come back to do our check-in. And I forgot if it's 2 or 3 minutes each, but I guess we'll have time for, it seems like 3. And then we'll do our continuation of Verses on the Faith Mind, our study group. So yeah, let's just take a moment to welcome everyone here. Maybe just looking around our community, our small community, taking everyone in, just acknowledging that we're here in this space. And whatever feels that it's serving you best, to just listen. Just taking a moment to sit in the way that feels comfortable to you and conducive to perhaps, being mindful of the talk for about 10 minutes. And I see that Z is lying down, which is lovely. Everybody else seems to be sitting up still. The Buddha encouraged us to practice in all possible ways, sitting up, lying down, standing, and so forth. So anyway, just see if you would like to keep your eyes open or closed, maybe just listening into the body to notice what serves you best in this moment. So lovely to be able to decide that on one's own, to see what is serving me best in this moment. So maybe taking this opportunity to really drop into your body, and perhaps with an intention to keep an awareness of the body as you continue to listen to these words. So Linda mentioned last time that she never really understood the teachings of non-attachment, how it feels natural to her to be attached to people she loves and cares about, and how connection is something beautiful that she feels is normal, to feel attached to people we feel connected with. So Linda really raised the question, how can attachment be a bad thing? So that's what I would like to address just for a little while this evening. So inspired by Linda's question, I wrote a few Dharma reflections on non-attachment and healthy relationships. In an attempt to answer Linda's question, it felt important, first of all, to acknowledge that not everyone had healthy attachments with caretakers as a child. For example, taking myself as an example, I think I've mentioned this here before, that I grew up with a mother who suffered from narcissistic personality disorder and pretty much grew up in service to her needs. So I really never felt safe and taken care of in my relationship with her. And so hence, I never really developed a healthy sense of attachment with her either. So it was not only that I was traumatized in my relationship with my mother, but I also developed a deep-seated fear of abandonment that has played out in my adult partnerships, pretty much all of my partnerships. Not that there have been tons, there have only been very few. I don't want to give you the wrong impression. So connection and a sense of safety and reassurance have been hugely important in my relationships, and I get attached very easily to people. So the Buddha offered the teaching of non-attachment to help people suffer less. He instructed his monastic disciples to recite the 5 remembrances on a daily basis. And the fourth of this remembrance is, it says that, quote, all that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. And he goes on to say, there is no way to escape being separated. There is no way to escape being separated. So I'd like to focus on the first part of this remembrance, this all that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. Taking in impermanence can help us care about others without being devastated or even angry when the object of our affection that we're attached to acts in ways that show their imperfection. When who or what we feel attached to disappoints us in the moment. So attached love turns to suffering when we depend on our loved ones to satisfy our needs. With attachment, when the person we count on for love makes a mistake or acts unskillfully, we get angry and feel resentment, perhaps even fear, because in that moment we feel unsafe. And then in contrast, unconditional love means we can take in the other person's imperfection and be at peace with it. To me, that is really what non-attachment means, that we don't suffer when things change, that we don't rely on others for our own happiness, that we don't lose perspective of the fact that ultimately true happiness can only be found inside of us. And this does not negate that we can also enjoy meaningful connections with others that give us great joy. However, it's important to remember that all human connections are messy because all of us are imperfect. And it's the people we rely on for safety and have felt safe with that can most easily disappoint and make us feel vulnerable when there's a hiccup in our interbeing. When we develop a sense of peace and equanimity around people's imperfections, while also working on self-awareness around what triggers us or feels like a threat to us because of childhood trauma. So if we can practice self-compassion and understanding towards others, we can enter more fully and joyfully into the rich territory of human connection. We can rest peacefully in the knowledge that nothing and nobody will ever be completely safe, be a completely safe haven for us. And most of you have probably at least read or glanced through the last sermon that the Buddha gave before his death, or at least perhaps are familiar with. If not, I'm just going to focus on this for a moment. So in the last sermon that the Buddha gave before his death, he encouraged us to be an island unto ourselves. And we can learn to be that island and still have the courage to enter into relationships. However, to enter a human bond takes courage because the conditions of that bond are subject to change and will lead to much suffering if we become overly attached. And I remembered Ajahn Chah's famous teaching point with regards to that. In front of his students, what he did is he held up a cup in front of them and said that the best way to relate to the cup is as if it is already broken. We use it and take care of it, but we remain unattached because we know it is subject to change. And the Buddha would probably add that as long as there is attachment to the pleasant and aversion to the unpleasant, liberation is impossible. And I would like to add that in this ever-changing world, our need for safety is very strong. And for our own well-being, we can enter into relationships with the understanding that no relationship can ever provide 100% emotional safety for us. However, if it's a healthy relationship, It allows us to feel safe enough, and we can practice interbeing in the spirit of non-attachment. So I wanted to encourage us all for this coming week to reflect on one important relationship in our life and write out the answer to a few questions. And I'm going to email you these questions after this evening and really encourage you to, if you keep a journal, for example, to perhaps answer these questions in your journal or just maybe write them out by hand or on the computer, but it's worth reflecting on. So just going to just briefly mention these questions that I'm going to send you, which are, the first one is, in my life, with whom do I have a relationship that makes me feel safe enough? How does this person or animal contribute to my well-being? And how do I contribute to theirs? In what ways am I being challenged in this relationship? What feels wholesome and what feels unwholesome in this relationship? And then last but not least, after listening to this talk, what does non-attachment mean to me and how can it contribute to my happiness? So I thought these would be some worthwhile things or questions or inquiries to consider when it comes to non-attachment. And yeah, I just wanted to offer these reflections and just take a moment again to just be quiet and let the words absorb before we switch into the next activity. So maybe just taking a moment to really bring to presence the body in, the body that we're living in, connecting with the breath, with the seat and the earth below you. And then in their time, I'll let Z take over to guide us through a few minutes of mindful movement when Z feels ready.
You can stay exactly where you are, and I invite you to place your hands on your belly below your navel. And see if you can feel your breath inhaling out against your hands, and then feeling the belly retreat back in on the exhale. And you might deepen your breath in order to feel this expansion and contraction beneath your hands. Maybe deepening it even more until you feel as though the belly is full, expanding as much as it can with your inhale. And then just relaxing back on the exhale. And now move your hands up so that they're laying across your ribs with the fingertips touching in the center, perhaps just the longest fingers touching. And notice a deep filling into the ribs expands them out till those touching fingers separate. And then on the exhale, the fingers coming back together. And then you can relax one hand and place the other hand at your chest below your collarbones. And see if you can breathe so that you feel the movement of the breath under your hand here. Rising and falling. Deepening the breath so that you feel as though the entire palm feels the breath. Fingers. Now bring the hand that was resting back to your lower belly, below your navel. And we'll sew all three parts together. Breathing first into the belly, expanding out into that palm. And then filling into the space between the hands, letting the ribs broaden and open. And then breathing all the way up into the hand on the heart. All in one inhale. And then feel everything relax on the exhale. Just releasing back down the ribs, the belly. And then just repeat a few more times. Breathing as fully into the belly as you can before moving on to filling the ribs. Expanding there as fully as you can, and then finally filling into the tops of the lungs, under the hand at the chest. Now see if you can relax both hands off your body, or you can rest them on your legs. And are you able to maintain this three-part breath without the guidance of your hands? Now, without changing anything in the breath, we'll just layer on some simple movement. So when the breath expands, now we're just expanding mostly vertically from belly to chest. And so we'll see how it feels on the inhale to open the arms wide at the side, and maybe even reaching back a little bit, emphasizing the opening of the heart. And then on the exhale, Clasp your hands together, press the palms forward, drop the chin to the chest, pull the belly in. And again, inhaling, opening the arms back and wide, feeling the breath expanding upward, outward, in all directions, filling the body, rounding the back, tucking the chin, pulling the belly in, pressing the palms forward on the exhale. And then on your next inhale, we'll change it a little bit again, but the breath doesn't change. Maintain that attention to the breath. And we'll inhale and reach the arms up, stretching up through the fingertips. And then exhale, release over the legs. Let the head relax fully. Let the arms release down. And then you may push into your feet a little bit to roll yourself back up on the inhale. Reaching up, stretching, and then again down. And just continue like that. Noticing the relationship between the movement and the breath, how the reaching affects the breathing, how the breathing relates to the reaching, and how the folding over influences the exhale, if it does. And on your next exhale, instead of folding forward, just relax your arms down. Sitting up in whatever posture serves you for your meditation, which Bettina will now guide us through.
So just wanted to invite Elaine to our group. And we had a few reflections this evening already before the mindful movement about non-attachment, and we have recorded that. So if you wish to visit them, the reflections, or revisit them, you're always welcome to do so at any given point during this next week or whenever. So I wanted to add to the experience of non-attachment, and I mentioned in the Dharma reflections about the Five Remembrances, which are actually teachings that the teachings on the Five Remembrances is actually a teaching that the Buddha asked his monastic disciples to reflect on each and every day. So it kind of gives you a sense of the importance that he placed on these five remembrances. And so I wanted to weave them into the guided meditation this evening, inspired by one of the former nuns of Thich Nhat Hanh's order. Her name is Kyra Jewel Lingo, and I actually had the privilege to sit a retreat with her years ago. And it became even more meaningful. I knew that she was a nun in the order of Thich Nhat Hanh because I could recognize her outfit or her robes in particular. But I didn't know that at the time she was actually there to meditate for several weeks in silence because she was contemplating if it was still the right path for her to be a monastic. And she did ultimately leave the order, and she is now becoming a wonderful lay teacher at Spirit Rock and other places with a particular interest in racial justice and related issues. So inspired by the meditation in her first book, which is actually called "We Are Made for These Times," I wanted to share this guided meditation with you this evening. So just take another moment to settle into a meditative position that is supportive and comfortable to you. Feel your breath and feel your body. Let yourself begin to open and settle as you drop into the moment. And we're going to go over these 5 remembrances one at a time. And after reading them one by one, there's always going to be some time where we can really drop into and give a time to more deeply reflect on them in our own way, in our own time during this meditation. So the first remembrance that the Buddha instructed his disciple to reflect on every day is the following. I am of the nature to grow old. There is no way to escape growing old. So perhaps you can visualize yourself aging, becoming an old person, or even older than you are at the moment, if you're already an older person. And with your eyes closed, see if you can see your body, see your face. Let yourself really contemplate the process of growing older or growing old. Old age will happen to all of us. So notice any response to this in your body, and bring kindness and care to what you sense at the moment. You can breathe in and recollect growing old, and breathe out and recollect no escape. Breathing in, growing old. Breathing out, no escape. And we're just going to allow a couple of minutes so you can really practice with this breathing meditation at a deeper level. Breathing in, growing old. Breathing out, no escape. And then gently let go of this first remembrance as we transition into the second one, which goes as follows. I am of the nature to have ill health. There is no way to escape having ill health. So now contemplate yourself in some situation in which you're dealing with illness, whether physical or psychological, when people may need to help you and take care of you, or you're unable to do the things you're normally able to do. Let that in. That's part of life. There is no escape from ill health. Notice any response to this in your body and bring kindness and curiosity to what you're feeling. Breathing in ill health, breathing out, no escape. And just continuing this breathing practice for a couple of minutes. Breathing in ill health, breathing out, no escape. And then gently let go of this reflection as well as we transition into the third remembrance rather, which goes as follows. I am of the nature to die. There is no way to escape death. And picture yourself on your deathbed in the last moments of your life, taking your final breaths. Perhaps feel into how you want those moments to be. Peaceful, calm, free from fear. Know that every time you bring up the awareness of your own death now, while you're fully alive, you nourish the seed in you of being able to face your death with strength, with clarity, with tranquility. Really let yourself take in that one day you will die. One day you will take your very last breath. There is no escape from death. And you can notice whatever sensations may be there in response to this in your body, and bring gentleness and curiosity to what you're feeling. Breathing in dying, breathing out, no escape. And we'll gently let go of this remembrance as well now and move into the fourth of the remembrances. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. There's no way to escape being separated from them. So again, visualize yourself having to be separated from what you love, people, places, animals, things, and how they will all change. There's no way to escape being separated from them. Allow that in. Accept that truth. Notice whatever sensations may be there in response to this in your body, and bring kindness and curiosity to what you're feeling. Breathing in, all that is dear to me will change. Breathing out, no escape from being separated from those I love. As you let go of this fourth remembrance, take a moment to recenter yourself in your body again. feeling the earth beneath you, noticing the touch points, the parts of the body that are in contact with the floor or in contact with a body part of yours. And let yourself continue to breathe gently as you take in this fifth and last remembrance. Breathing in. Sorry. My actions are my only true belongings. I cannot escape the consequences of my actions. My actions are the ground on which I stand. And you can bring awareness to the fact that when we pass away, we can't take anything with us. All we have are the consequences of our actions. And there's no escape from these consequences. Contemplate how you wish to live today with this in mind. Breathing in, my actions are the only thing I can take with me. Breathing out, there is no escape from the consequences of my actions. And we'll let go of this fifth remembrance. Let go of any thoughts as best as you can. And just spend these remaining minutes in meditation in deep listening to your body, deep listening to your heart. And just notice with a sense of kindness and curiosity what wants to be shared from those parts of your body. And for the last couple minutes of the meditation, perhaps keep your awareness on the body, and in particular, notice how you can sense that you are alive. Maybe picking up the sensations in the body, feeling the aliveness in the sensations, feeling the aliveness in the movement of the breath as it travels in and out. I just wanted to share this poem or these words rather, by James Baldwin to help us end this meditation on the 5 hindrances. He said that it is the responsibility of free people to trust and to celebrate what is constant. Birth, struggle, and death are constant. And so is love, though we may not always think so. And to apprehend the nature of change, to be able and willing to change. I speak of change not on the surface, but in the depths. Change in the sense of renewal. But renewal becomes impossible if one supposes things to be constant that are not. Safety, for example, or money or power. One clings then to chimeras by which one can only be betrayed, and the entire hope, the entire possibility of freedom disappears. Namaste, dear Sangha.
If you wish to move in the one way, do not dislike the worlds of senses and ideas. Indeed, to embrace them fully is identical with true enlightenment. The wise person attaches to no goals, but the foolish person fetters himself or herself. There is one Dharma without differentiation. Distinctions arise from the clinging needs of the ignorant. To seek mind with the discriminating mind is the greatest of mistakes. So we did talk about this last time, and I wasn't sure if we were finished. So we'll just see if there's anything that anybody else wants to say about it. And if not, I'll just post the next paragraph.
I would love to hear some thoughts on the very last line. To seek mind with the discriminating mind is the greatest of mistakes. I think I understand what discriminating mind is. It's picking and choosing, better, worse, up, down. But to seek mind, I guess, I'm not sure what that means. So I'd love to hear some thoughts on that, I guess is what I'm saying. it seems important some way, and it's not quite getting us. I just have a vague sense of what's happening there.
So I believe that in Zen monasteries, the monks and nuns are often encouraged by the masters to clean windows, for example. And cleaning the windows represents, when the window becomes clean of dust or dirt or whatever, it really represents what the mind is considered in Zen Buddhism. And since what we're reading, this poem is from the Zen tradition, I think seeking mind with the discriminating mind is just this. When it says seeking the mind, it speaks of the larger mind, of the empty mind that is free from discrimination. And so I think that's what it's trying to speak to in this particular sentence, if I'm not mistaken. And I think the same practices really in temples, like the importance on the little tasks, like sweeping, sweeping the hallways, and it induces the same sort of understanding. The sweeping clean, it's like sweeping the mind clean of all these fetters, of all these discriminations, of all these thoughts. And what remains is the mind when it's free of all of that. And I think that's what it speaks to. Yeah, I was trained in the Zen and Pure Land traditions the first few years, and I got a lot of instruction on those things. So I think I'm pretty well informed on that. But please help me out if you can.
Yeah, I want to say one of the things. Ooh, Bruce, are you sure? Sorry. One of the things that I noticed when I was seeing this is that there are two ways that mind came up here. One was with a capital M, and one was with a lowercase m. And I think they are, in fact, what Bettina was saying, kind of talking about two different types of mind. The mind that does not discriminate, the mind that sees things clearly, and the discriminating mind, which neatly puts things into pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, whatever. So I think it's just it's two different types of mind that they're referring to as well. So yeah, and I mean, obviously we're human beings, so we all live in the lowercase mind. So we're human. I mean, that's part of being a human being, and so it's just and that's where our ignorance is not seeing maybe that not seeing that, but it's not the easiest thing to see unless you're lucky enough to come across what we have been able to come across and see. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would just kind of add in the same thing Bettina and Lauren are saying. The way I saw it was that the discriminating mind is kind of my own mind. So to seek mind with my own mind is the greatest of mistakes. My own mind puts blinders on things and has objectives and goals, and my own mind is just not capable of seeing mind with the capital M. And so when I try that, not only is it a great mistake, but it's really frustrating.
I'm reminded of a quote which I confess I just looked up to see who said it, and it was Einstein. So it it carries the weight of one of our biggest geniuses ever. But it's the quote is something like, "We can't solve problems with the same thinking that created them." You know, so you can't think your way out of a problem that the mind created. Is kind of like, the discriminating mind in and of itself. If you look at the sentence prior to this one, distinctions arise from the clinging needs of the ignorant. So the discriminating mind is born out of ignorance, because I'm equating distinctions arising with discriminating mind. So if ignorance is what creates the discriminating mind, then you can't find anything from that place, no less that which cannot even be found.
Thank you so much, everyone. That was illuminating. I was close. I was circling around, but I didn't have a clear view, and that helped me. I'll noodle on it during the week. Thank you.
I wanted to say too, we in our other group we studied verses on the faith mind for about a year, and I never noticed the capital M and the small m until tonight. So when Bettina said what she said, I saw that and I had never noticed it. So it's funny. Yeah, yeah. Hmm.
It's like self with a capital S and with a small s, which we're more used to seeing.
I wasn't here last week, but I really liked the first sentence. Do not dislike the worlds of senses and ideas. Because for me, so often, if I really see it, my spirituality is a form of escape. And it's a form of kind of denial of the body and wanting to just be spiritual and just be in my mind. And that really is disliking the world of senses and ideas. So it's really disliking my body. So I like that. That kind of grabbed me. So the mind with the capital M is one that welcomes the world of senses and ideas, not attached. It's got to be non-attached and welcoming at the same time, which is an interesting dynamic. Because at times, if I think in my own mind, I think, oh, non-attachment means I'm just alone and alienated almost. And what I'm seeing here is non-attachment, but also welcoming everything.
I just had the image from what you were sharing, Bruce, of this, that, this is attachment. This, so not this, but this, where you're receiving, you're welcoming, you're both offering and receiving with these open hands, which allows you to be in the world without clinging to anything.
And just reiterating it for myself, be in the world with my body. I have to reiterate that over and over because a lot of my spirituality and all that image stuff was just kind of really an escape and a denial of my body and the fact that I even had a body. So, yeah, that I'm welcome here in the world. I'm a part of it with my body which gets sick, my body which dies, and the other three things Bettina so lovely talked about.
And I'm sure you know, Bruce, because you're so learned, um, that the Buddha and most of the practitioners of his time were ascetics, and so you're not alone. I mean, they also were pursuing denial of the body as a spiritual um, avenue, maybe not for the same reasons that you tend to, because you said the word escape, but there was and still is in many traditions the belief that spiritual attainment comes from separating oneself from physical needs, physical pleasures, starving, flagellating, all these things just to deny the body. And the Buddha, of course, was fortunate to come upon a woman that offered him a tiny bit of porridge while he was starving. And he discovered that that was more conducive to enlightenment than denying his hunger. And thus the middle path was born.
It's interesting to me because I find that the most comfortable place as well for me is in kind of the capital M mind, and the my body and my mind. My body and my mental state are two things that I think that I'm very I struggle a lot with. I don't particularly. I think that I've had issues in my life, particularly accepting either of those two, my mind or my body. Like I tell people, well, I told my therapist, like, well, this thing that's happening to my body is far better than the thing that happened to my mind 3 years ago when I basically had what I would consider a nervous breakdown. Not for the first time, but but to me, being in the capital M mind is the safest place to possibly be. I think that I have to. I think that there is still something for me to learn about being in relationship with other people, as well as in relationship to the kind of aesthetic part of me. And, um, you know, I remember when I went to India, I went to Jyoti, and the Jyoti said to me, the material world does nothing but confuse you. And he really got it right on, because it was like, oh yeah, that really makes sense to me, because it does. But So I feel like I have to have a balance between my relationship with self and my ability to let other people in, which, you know, people see me as very open, but I'm really not. So, you know, anyway, I'm working on that.
I'm getting a sense of the attachment issue as being counting on, say, for instance, in a relationship, being attached to them being a certain way. You know, the idolizing, so to speak, of the other or the situation. You know, I'm a Sagittarian, so I can certainly have that big picture. Whoa, this is fantastic right here, because I haven't looked at any of the details at all. And then, of course, those begin to come through, and I go, what? There's a flaw. Wait, there's more than one flaw. Oh no, it's all messed up. I just hate this. I'm not quite that didactic with it anymore, but there's a function of that happening. So that really kind of clarifies that for me. It's not, you know, as Bruce said, it doesn't mean you're all alone and isolated from everyone. That's not non-attachment. Non-attachment is, as Z said, I'm in a loving place with you, and that means whoever you are. I mean, however you are is okay with me. I'm open to that, unless it becomes an issue for me, and then that's when we begin to talk and so forth and so on. But not to eliminate that idolizing. No one is that. No one is the on the pedestal thing. The knight in shining armor, or the Queen of Swords coming through brilliantly and fiercely like Joan of Arc. It's not that. There's elements of that, I'm sure, in the beloved, I'm sure. But that limits them, making them kind of a mythological being instead of a human, like me and everybody I know. So, see, little bits of understanding are coming through. Old dogs can learn new tricks. Just saying. Gratifying.
I think, Linda, that's such a important spiritual lesson about the idealizing, because I remember when I first started going to a Buddhist temple here locally and got really involved there, not just going to the meditations and the sutra studies, but also really getting involved there with the community and doing service work and so forth. And I got actually really, really close to one of the nuns, and she invited me into her office, and we had private talks, and I really idealized her. And in the process, I also found out that she's really, really human, and that there was actually a thing going on between her and the other nun that, maybe short of hating each other, there was a lot of contention going on between them. And it was like, what's happening here? You know, I came to this place of peace, of meditation, everything is perfect here, and that's how it's supposed to be. And then you're shaking out of this delusion, basically, that, you know, there's still human beings there, even when they're monastics. They're just on a path, just like we are. And I think that is often a really important spiritual wake up, of shaking up of our illusion of the perfect, you know, the perfect setting that we find to find peace. And I think once we can really break free from that, then we're further along on the path, a lot further along. At least that's what I experienced. It was a really painful lesson, but it was really that depending on the outside and then having that perfect image shaken up that directed me more inside again. So that was a beautiful lesson that happened there.
I think too, something I've learned and experienced in a number of times with idealizing another person or putting them on a pedestal is really disempowering myself. And that is what feels crummy. And yeah, I kind of am losing where I went with that, but I think that that in itself is powerful, that in idealizing another person, they're going to be the savior, they're going to make everything right, is incredibly disempowering to myself. And I think it's a body blow. It's a function of my mind thinking that stuff and having those plans and those blinders, but it's also like a gut punch to my body. Kind of like, you're not good enough, right? You need someone else. You need this knight in shining armor or this Joan of Arc on the horse to fix it all.
What you just said, Bruce, was feeding into exactly what I was thinking, which is that, of course, our habits in how we relate to others and how we show up in relationships and what we expect and all of that is established when we're born, basically, and we're infants and we are helpless. And the first person we love or get attached to is our caregiver or givers. And we do count on them as being perfect and meeting our needs, and they don't, because no parent is perfect. And it's kind of a psychological fact that when you're a child and your parent is screwing up, rather than understanding that your parent is flawed, you instead feel like, I must be flawed, I must be screwing up. So, my parents were awful parents, and some of you are in my club, and so that what that creates is shame. It's like you can't, as a child, accept that this person who is responsible for your life, for your safety, for your well-being, is so deeply flawed, because that's scary. And it's much safer to feel like, oh, I must be an awful person. That's why they're treating me this way. That's why they're negligent. That's why they're abusive. That's why. Um, and I'm sure, like, if it's okay to use your example, Linda, you talked about the feelings of basically being a child that was given up probably makes you feel like, oh, what's wrong with me? And then you're given to this parent that's anxious. And rather than just being able to comprehend, is it being, oh, this is an inexperienced mother who doesn't understand what to do, didn't have siblings, blah, blah, blah. You feel like, I must be doing something wrong. Why is she so upset? Why is she so ill at ease? And we internalize it. And I think that that's something that we carry into our adult relationships, where we still hope that the people that we're in relationship with are perfect, because it brings us a sense of safety. If they're perfect, then I'm okay. I'm okay in the sense that I can relax because there's somebody in charge here who knows what they're doing and is taking care of things, and I can relax because all is well. And I can relax because makes me feel like I'm okay, like nothing's wrong with me. If I'm with this person who's perfect, then I must be pretty good too. So I think there's deep psychological roots for that particular flavor of attachment that you're talking about and that we're talking about, that needing to have other people be how we want them to be, how we feel safest.
I had recurring dreams for many years, various scenarios, various plots, various characters, but it always ended up with me in the back seat of a car and the driver driving us off a cliff or into the ocean or off a bridge. And that feeling of suspension and going, dang, there it is again. The feeling, as we're saying here, that the person in charge that's supposed to be driving the car, and I never would get a clear idea of who that was. That would just be somebody's driving the car that isn't me. I'm not safe with that person, but yet here I am trapped in this car. So I finally, I guess, got myself out of the car because I stopped having that awful dream over and over and over. I went off so many locations, cars flying off. It was just terrible. But then it finally stopped. So it's amusing now. It wasn't then.
And I just wanted to check in before we did a closing, because some of us can be very loquacious and others of us perhaps more reserved. So before we close, I just wanted to invite you, Elaine, if you had something you wanted to share, with no pressure whatsoever. Sometimes listening is your share.
Thanks. No, it's really interesting, the direction that, well, the things we're talking about right now, because I was going through some old files and I ran across these just a piece of paper with scribbles on it. And it was addressing an old relationship that I was in, and discussing how I was dissatisfied with myself, with myself on paper, discussing what this person was lacking or what was missing for me. And I was really stunned because it's some similarities to what I complain about now. And it's just, there's a point where you have to say, I need to look in the mirror on myself. Just yeah, it's just funny. I don't know, it's just food for thought, that's all.
I like just remind of what Z said. Our relationship patterns are so kind of in some ways formed when we're infants. And finding ways to get attention, ways to be heard, strategies we use are formed at such a young age, and they do repeat. That's why, for me, the value of noticing, of meditating and noticing.
Okay, so I'm just going to close us out here. Maybe do something a little untraditional, but picking up with the theme of where we're at. And I do invite you to close your eyes, but you can sit in any way or lay down. Doesn't matter what your body posture is. But if you're safe closing your eyes and that helps you go inward, please do. And if not, just gaze down if you prefer. And I invite you to call to mind any relationship with any being whom you loved or currently love. Doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. Just call that being to mind, and first just notice in the body how it feels just to think about this love that you felt for this being, or feel. Maybe think about some of the things that delight you about this being. And notice how the body feels now. Notice the heart. Notice how bright the mind is. And then call to mind something, some trait of this being that you hold as unsatisfactory, something disappointing, something you wish you could change, or maybe an incident between the two of you where you were let down by their behavior or words. And notice how that feels now in the body. And then see how it would feel if you embraced that characteristic, if you welcomed it. If you saw this so-called flaw as an imperfection that makes this jewel even more valuable. Imagine appreciating this being's imperfections. Seeing it as a treasured part of the whole that you love. And how does it feel in your body to be welcoming of this too? To let the love that you feel have no excuses, no exceptions, no separation.